Hi, welcome to the Stitchin Post demo. I'm Debbie, and today we're going to be talking about English paper piecing, otherwise known as EPP. And we're going to go over some basics and kind of how to get started. For those of you that don't know what English paper piecing is, it is a form of hand stitching that uses shaped paper pieces with fabric wrapped around it. So it's something that I learned a few years ago and I've kind of become obsessed with it. So let's get started by talking about some of the notions and tools that you will need to get started paper piecing. Of course, the first thing that you're going to need is your shaped pieces. These are hexy shapes, comes in a big pack, and they're kind of a cardstock. And the nice thing about that is you can reuse these about 3 to 4 times. If you're glue basting them, which is something that I'll show you a little bit later. The paper pieces come in all different shapes and all different sizes. These are 1 inch, and the 1 inch is measured by the side pieces. You know, you can get larger, you can get smaller. I mean, all the way down to these teeny tiny little ones. There's all different shapes, diamonds, hexagons, you know, anything that you can imagine, there's shapes that you can use. You will need fabric, and I have found our 2-inch charm packs work great for the 1-inch hexies, and I'll show you a little bit later kind of a secret to those. The needles that I like using are these number 10 applique needles, and it's a big eye needle, and the big eye, you would think it's a really big eye. It's actually 3 times longer than a non-big eye needle. No wider, but it's longer. So it makes it a little bit easier to thread. The needle itself is a short needle, so it's less time that you're spending taking it through the fabric. And it's a sturdy needle, so it will bend a little bit, but it's not going to bend and break to the point that you have to replace it. The other thing I use are the Soline glue pens, and it has a refillable glue center, and this is what I use to baste my paper pieces, and I'll show you that. And you can get refills for those. The thread that I like using is this Sulky cotton and steel 50 weight thread, and it's a thin enough thread that it's not going to show through when you do your stitching, but it's strong enough that it will hold your seams together perfectly. I love these Kai little 4-inch scissors. These are perfect for snipping your threads and, you know, whatever you need to do. The other thing I like about these is they're micro-serrated, and so it grabs the fabric and cuts them without squishing it, because sometimes when you have scissors, you know, and you're doing multiple layers, it will kind of squish the fabric. So these are great scissors to have in your sewing kit. I tend to use fabric scissors when I'm cutting my pieces. A lot of people will use a rotary cutter, and it kind of depends. If I'm doing diamonds or shapes other than hexies where there's a lot of cutting, I'll use a rotary cutter, but I prefer just some regular fabric scissors. The other thing that I like to use is our template plastic, and this will give you, what did I do with my piece? You can cut a template out that includes, so it's the size of your paper piece with the seam allowance on it. So when you go to trace around your fabric, you have that seam allowance and you can cut your pieces really easily. You can also buy sets of templates. So this is a 2.5 inch that has all the sizes or all the different shapes that you might need. So, all right, I think the rotary cutting mat, I will say, works out really great because you can make a cut, turn it, make a cut, and you're not having to move your fabric around. So that makes it really easy to cut these small pieces, and it's so portable. I love it. So the one thing I will say about English paper piecing is there's not a lot of setup. There's no sewing machine required, so it makes it very easily portable. Take it with you, sit on the couch at night, which is what I do. But yeah, you can start and stop at any time, and so it's a portable project that you can take in the car, on an airplane, vacation, whatever. So, if you're using a 1-inch hexie and you're using the 2.5-inch charm pack, the thing that's really nice is you don't even have to trim this down into shape. That's the great thing about English paper piecing. You don't have to be really careful with your cutting like you do when you're cutting out a typical quilt. So to glue baste, you're going to take your glue pen, make a thin line on the paper, and I like to leave a little gap between, right at the edge of the paper. That will make it easier for you to catch those threads. If you have glue right up here, it's gonna be a little bit harder to go through. So it's just glue one side, and you just kind of go around in a circle. And it's really fast to kind of glue baste. The other way that you can do it is to stitch, kind of glue baste it with thread by stitching it, but it's not something I have done, and I kind of prefer this method. All right. The thing that's really nice about the glue basting is it holds your fabric on there, and it makes nice tight edges, and it gives you a crisp little corner on each one of those little points. If you're going to use some fabric that you want to do some fussy cutting, and I kind of did that on this with these flowers, your plastic template comes in really handy there because it allows you to see through the fabric and see exactly where you want to place, your template to get the full image in there. And then you would just draw around there and cut it with fabric scissors. That's what I tend to do. Right. So let's get started, and I'm going to show you kind of the basics of stitching together some hexies. And I already have some started here. I tend to not use a knot on when I'm starting, and I'll show you why. So we're going to take our thread, our needle, and when I thread my needle, I do about an arm's length of thread, and that will keep it from getting twisted. So you're just going to grab, and I don't know if you can see this, I'm just grabbing like the top two, 1 to 2 threads in each piece. They're faced together, and I'm going to pull it through and leave a tiny little tail. So let's get that a little bit smaller. Okay, I'm going to hold my tail over right here. I'm going to go back through, and I'm going to go a little bit under that thread, go back through the 2 pieces, pull it until I have a loop, and then this is where I'm going to make my knot. And I'm going to go through 2 times to make a knot. And this will keep this intersection piece very tight and very secure. So when you go back with this tail, you want to bury it inside your seam. So you're just kind of forming a little tunnel with that. So, and again, you're just going to bury that inside your seam. And the thing that, what you want to strive for is about 14 to 16 stitches per inch. That's going to be enough to hold the pieces together securely without damaging your fabric. Because the more times you go through your fabric, the weaker it gets, and the more it's going to damage it. So we'll just go through. They don't have to be, really close together. The other thing you want to pay attention to is that you're going straight across from one piece to the other. So the diagonal string is going to be on the back side on the seam, but you won't see the stitching when you go straight across, and it will keep it nice and tight and will not allow the fabric to kind of stretch. All right. Okay, so I'm sure you get the idea. You're just grabbing, you want to go shallow. You don't want to go deep on these stitches. And they hold just fine with just catching, you know, 1 or 2 threads. Okay. So the question you might ask is, when do I remove the paper? So once you get, once you have stitched around all the sides of your fabric, then you can pull that paper out. And to pull it out, you're basically just gonna pull it, you know, one side, peel it off, and it will remove very easily. So like I said, you're gonna use that whip stitch. You're gonna strive for 14 to 16 stitches per inch. Doesn't have to be perfect, but once you kind of get into a rhythm, you'll notice how far apart you want those stitches to be. So let me show you some of the projects that you can do with English paper piecing. So this is a journal cover. We actually have a pattern that Val did, a sewing card that shows you how to make it. And the only thing that I did in addition is to applique this panel of hexes on top of it. So it makes it very easy. I applique on the top and the bottom, and then of course this is stitched inside the seam and machine stitched on the side, and it gives you some nice little flaps. Of course, a pin cushion is always a great little project. This one is filled with our crushed walnut shells that you can get here in the store. Fun little zipper pouch. And again, this one I machine stitched the hexes on to a fat quarter, and it made it perfect. And again, this is our Radiance fabric that we have in the store. You can always do a cute little mug rug. Now this is a Tula Pink pattern. It's called Tula Nova. This was my very first English paper piecing piece. And the great thing about some of those, you can buy a complete kit. And what this includes is not only the pattern, but you can get the plastic templates that you need. You get all of your paper pieces and like I said, the pattern. And that's what I did for this one, which was really fun. And then this last one is a hexie quilt. So I'll sit at night and just do a bunch of flower hexes. And when I had enough, I finally stitched them all together and then did a little bit of hand quilting on that as well. So that's, you know, that's a fun project. My latest kind of obsession is I've moved on to stars. And so I have all these stars that I have stitched together, and I'm just waiting for a project to put those in. So let me show you a couple of books that we have that might help you. This one is really great. This one is Weekend Makes English Paper Piecing, and it has 25 projects in it. Pin cushions, it has a zipper pouch, lots of fun things. And this one actually includes templates that you can use to cut out your own paper pieces or, you know, templates. So this is a really fun book. This one, the Ultimate Paper Piecing Reference Guide, this covers not only English paper piecing, but foundation paper piecing. And it has some great tips and tools in it for both of those. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, because we do a different demo every Thursday, and you'll want to make sure that you are able to view those upcoming videos that we have coming up soon. Thanks so much.